Section 11, Vehicle Inspection Test. This section covers 11.1, all vehicles, 11.2, internal inspection, all vehicles, 11.3, external inspection, all vehicles, 11.4, school bus only, 11.5, trailer, 11.6, coach/transit bus, 11.7, taking the CDL vehicle inspection test, 11.1, all vehicles. The vehicle inspection test is a skills test to see if the customer identifies which features and equipment on the test vehicle should be inspected before operating the vehicle. Interpreters are prohibited. The entire vehicle inspection test must be conducted in English pursuant to CFR Title 49, subsection 391.11, subsections B, subsection 2, and 383.133, subsection C, subsection 5. If you communicate in a language other than English or fail to comprehend instructions given to you in English during the skills test, which are made up of the vehicle inspection test, the basic control skills test, and the road test, you will receive a verbal warning for the first two offenses committed on the same test date. Upon the third offense committed on the same test date, the test will end as an automatic failure. A vehicle inspection should be done the same way each time, so you will learn all the steps and be less likely to forget something during the test. Vehicle inspection tests are conducted to ensure that a vehicle is safe to operate. During the vehicle inspection test, you will be expected to explain or show your knowledge of the vehicle inspection process. During the vehicle inspection test, you must show that the vehicle is safe to drive. You will have to walk around the vehicle, name, point to, or touch each item and explain to the examiner what you are checking for and why. Any vehicle that has components marked or labeled cannot be used for the vehicle inspection test. The brake lights, emergency flashers, turn signals, and horn must be checked. If any of these items do not work, the skills and road portions of the test will be postponed. You may use the guides shown on the last page of this section when taking your vehicle inspection test. You cannot write any instructions or notes on the vehicle inspection guide. If you do not pass the vehicle inspection test, the other tests will be postponed. Remember, you are allowed a total of 3 attempts to pass the vehicle inspection, basic control skills, and road tests. 11.2, internal inspection, all vehicles. Study the following vehicle parts for the type of vehicle you will be using during the CDL skills test. You should be able to identify each part and tell the examiner what you are looking for or inspecting. As you approach the vehicle, notice its general condition. Look for damage or the vehicle leaning to one side. Look under the vehicle for fresh oil, coolant, grease, or fuel leaks. Check area around the vehicle for hazards to vehicle movement, such as people, other vehicles, objects, low-hanging wires or limbs, and so on. Check that the parking brakes are set and/or wheels chalked. You may have to raise the hood or open the engine compartment door. Check the following. (11.2.1) Engine compartment, engine off. Leaks/hoses. First, look for puddles on the ground. Next, look for dripping fluids on underside of the engine and transmission. Next, Inspect hoses for condition and leaks. Next, inspect the water pump. Next, inspect the water pump. Identify the water pump. Identify that the water pump is mounted securely and not leaking. Next is the alternator. Identify the alternator. Check that the alternator is securely mounted and all wires are securely fastened. Next, air compressor. Identify the air compressor. Next, check that the air compressor is securely mounted and not leaking. Next section after leaks/hoses is oil level. First, check the oil level when the engine is off. Next, indicate where the dipstick is located. Next, see that the oil level is within safe operating range. The level must be above the refill mark. Next section is coolant level. So we have leaks/hoses, oil level, and now coolant level. Look at the sight glass on the radiator or coolant reservoir. The adequate level will show in sight glass. If no sight glass is available, you must describe what you would look for after removing radiator cap. Next is power steering fluid. Check the dipstick and see where the fluid is relative to the refill mark, or check the sight glass. The level must be above the refill mark. Next is windshield washer fluid level. Check the fluid level and that the cap is secure. Next comes engine compartment belts. First, check the following belts for snugness: 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch play at center of the belt. Check them for cracks, frays, loose fibers, or signs of wear. Check the power steering belt, the water pump belt, the alternator belt, and the air compressor belt. Note, if any of the components listed above are not belt driven, you must first tell the examiner which components are not belt driven, and next, make sure the components are operating properly, not damaged or leaking, and mounted securely. Next comes hydraulic, brakes, master cylinder, and brake fluid. First, check that the master cylinder is securely attached and not leaking. Next, check the level of brake fluid in the reservoir to ensure it is between the add and full marks. Safe start. First, place the gearshift lever in neutral or park for automatic transmissions. Next, depress the clutch before attempting to start the vehicle. Next, start the vehicle and keep the clutch depressed until the engine reaches idling speed. Then release the clutch slowly. 11.2.2 Cab check/engine start. Oil pressure gauge. First, make sure the oil pressure gauge is working. Next, check that the pressure gauge shows increasing or normal oil pressure, or that the warning light goes off. Next, if equipped, the oil temperature gauge should begin a gradual rise to the normal operating range. Temperature gauge is next. First, make sure the temperature gauge is working. Next, the temperature should begin to climb to the normal operating range, or the temperature light should be off. Next is air gauge. First, make sure the air gauge is working properly. Next, build the air pressure to the governor cutout, approximately 120 to 140 psi, or as specified by the manufacturer. Next, ammeter/voltmeter. Check that the gauges show that the alternator and or generator is charging, or that the warning light is off. Next is mirrors and windshield. The mirrors should be clean and adjusted properly from the inside. Next, the windshield should be clean with no illegal stickers, obstructions, or damage to the glass. Emergency equipment. Check for spare electrical fuses. Next, check for 3 red reflective triangles, 6 fuses, or 3 liquid burning flares. Next, check that the fire extinguisher is properly charged and securely mounted. Note: if the vehicle is not equipped with electrical fuses, you must mention this to the examiner. Moving on. Check optional emergency equipment. Tire chains, where winter conditions require them, is the first one. Next, tire changing equipment. Next, list of emergency phone numbers. Finally, accident reporting kit or packet. Moving on. Wipers/washers. First, check that the wiper arms and blades are secure, not damaged, and operate smoothly. Next, if equipped, the windshield washers must operate correctly. Moving on. Lights/reflectors/reflector tape condition, sides and rear. Test that the dash indicators work when the corresponding lights are turned on. First is left turn signal. Next comes right turn signal. Next comes 4-way emergency flashers. Next comes high beam headlight. Next comes anti-lock braking system ABS indicator. Check that all external lights and reflective equipment are clean and functional and not broken or missing. The light and reflector checks include verification for correct color. Clearance lights are red on rear, amber elsewhere. Next is headlights, high and low beams. Next is tail lights. Next is backing lights. Next is turn signals. Next is 4-way emergency flashers. Next is brake lights. Next is red reflectors on rear and amber reflectors elsewhere. Next is reflector tape condition. Next is license plate lights. Note: checks of the brake, turn signals, and 4-way emergency flasher functions must be done separately. Horn. Check that the air and/or electric horns work. Next comes heater/defroster. Test that the heater and defroster work. Parking brake check. Fasten your seatbelt. Next, with the air pressure built to governor cutout and the parking brake engaged, trailer brakes released on combination vehicles, check that the parking brake will hold the vehicle by gently trying to pull forward with the parking brake on. With the air pressure built to governor cutout and the trailer parking brake engaged, combination vehicles only, check that the trailer parking brake will hold the vehicle by gently trying to pull forward with the trailer parking brake on. Hydraulic brake check. Pump the brake pedal 3 times and then hold it down for 5 seconds. The brake pedal should not move or depress during the 5 seconds. If equipped with a hydraulic brake reserve or backup system, with the key off, depress the brake pedal and listen for the sound of the reserve system electric motor. Next, if equipped with a hydro boost brake system, with the engine off, release the parking brake, depress and release the brake pedal several times to deplete all hydraulic pressure. Depress and hold the brake pedal with light pressure, 15 to 25 pounds, and then start the engine and run it at idle speed. If the hydro boost is operating, the pedal will yield slightly to foot pressure and then hold. Less pressure is required to hold the pedal at this position. Check that the warning buzzer or light is off. Note, failure to perform both components of the hydraulic brake check will result in an automatic failure of the vehicle inspection test. Air brake check. Air brake equipped vehicles only. Refer to Section 5, In-Cab Air Brake Check for DMV Vehicle Inspection Testing. All items marked with an asterisk are required during the vehicle inspection test. These items must be demonstrated and the parameters verbalized to receive credit. Failure to perform these air brake tests correctly will result in an automatic failure for the entire vehicle inspection portion of the test. Service brake check. You will be required to check the application of air or hydraulic service brakes. This procedure is designed to determine that the brakes are working correctly and the vehicle does not pull to one side or the other. Pull forward at 5 miles per hour, apply the service brake, and stop. Check to see that the vehicle does not pull to either side and it stops when the brake is applied. Safety belt. Check that the safety belt is securely mounted, adjusts, lashes properly, and is not ripped or frayed. 11.3. External inspection, all vehicles. 11.3.1. Steering. Steering box / hoses. First, check that the steering box is securely mounted and not leaking. Look for any missing nuts and or bolts. Next, check for power steering fluid leaks or damage to the power steering hoses. Steering linkage. See that the connecting links, arms, and rods from the steering box to the wheel are not worn or cracked. Next, check that the joints and sockets are not worn or loose and that there are no missing nuts, bolts, or cotter keys. 11.3.2. Suspension. Springs / air / torque. First, look for missing, shifted, cracked, or broken leaf springs. If 1/4 or more are missing or broken, it will put the vehicle out of service. Next, look for broken or distorted coil springs. Next, if the vehicle is equipped with torsion bars, torque arms, or other types of suspension components, check that they are not damaged and are mounted securely. Next, air ride suspension should be checked for damage and leaks. Moving on, mounts. Look for cracked or broken spring hangers, missing or damaged bushings, and broken, loose, or missing bolts, U-bolts, or other axle mounting parts. The mounts should be checked at each point where they are secured to the vehicle frame and axle or axles. Shock absorbers. See that shock absorbers are secure and that there are no leaks. Note, be prepared to perform the same suspension components inspection on every axle, power unit, and trailer if equipped. 11.3.3. Brakes. Slack adjusters and push rods. First, check that the slack adjuster is securely mounted. Next, look for broken, loose, or missing parts. Next, for manual slack adjusters, the brake push rod should not move more than 1 inch with the brakes released, when pulled by hand. Brake chambers. See that the brake chambers are not leaking, cracked, or dented and are mounted securely. Next, see that there are no loose or missing clamps. Brake hoses/lines. Check that the hoses or lines can supply air or hydraulic fluid to the brakes. Check for cracked, worn, or frayed hoses and that all couplings and fittings are secured and not leaking. Drum brake. Check for cracks, dents, or holes. Also, check for loose or missing bolts. Check for contaminants such as debris or oil/grease. Brake linings. Brake linings, where visible, should not be worn dangerously thin. On some brake drums, there are openings where the brake linings can be seen from outside the drum. For this type of drum, check that a visible amount of brake lining is showing. Note: be prepared to perform the same brake components inspection on every axle, power unit, and trailer if equipped. 11.3.4 Wheels. Rims. First, check for damaged or bent rims. Next, rims cannot have welding repairs. Next, check the rims for rust trails that may indicate the rim is loose on the wheel. Tires. The following items must be inspected on every tire. First, tread depth. Look for the minimum tread depth, 4/32 on steering axle tires, 2/32 on all other tires. Tire condition. Check that the tread is evenly worn and look for cuts or other damage to tread or sidewalls. Also, make sure that valve caps and stems are not missing, broken, or damaged. Check that the tires are the same type, not mixed radial and bias. Front tires for buses cannot be recapped, retreaded, or regrooved. Tire inflation. Check for proper inflation by using a tire gauge. Note: you will not get credit for simply kicking the tires or striking the tire with a mallet or other similar device to check for proper inflation. Hub oil/axle seals. See that the hub oil/grease and axle seals are not leaking, and if the wheel has a sight glass, that the oil level is adequate. Lug nuts. First, check that all lug nuts are present, free of cracks and distortions, and show no signs of looseness, such as rust trails or shiny threads. Next, make sure all bolt holes are not cracked or distorted. Spacers or bud spacing, B-U-D-D, spacers or bud spacing. That's the next section. If equipped, check that the spacers are not bent, damaged, or rusted through. Next, the spacers should be evenly centered with the dual wheels and tires evenly separated. Next, check that no debris and or foreign objects are between dual tires. Note: be prepared to perform the same wheel inspection on every axle, power unit, and trailer if equipped. 11.3.5 Side of vehicle. Doors/mirrors/windows. First, check that the doors are not damaged and they open and close properly from the outside. Next, hinges should be secure with the seals intact. Next, check that the mirrors and mirror brackets are not damaged, are mounted securely with no loose fittings, and are free from excessive dirt. Finally, windows must be clean and work properly. Fuel tank. Check that the tanks are secure, caps are tight, and there are no leaks from tanks, caps, or lines. Drive shaft. First, see that the drive shaft is not bent or cracked. Next, couplings, in parentheses, U-joints, end of parenthesis, should be secure and free of foreign objects. Moving on. Exhaust system. Check the system for damage and signs of leaks such as rust or carbon soot. Next, the exhaust system should not have cracks, holes, or severe dents. Next, the system should be connected tightly and mounted securely. If equipped with emissions after-treatment equipment, then the following applies. First, check the diesel exhaust fluid, DEF tank, DEF tank, to ensure the level of DEF in the tank is adequate, more than 1/8 of a tank. Next, check that the DEF indicator on the dash is working properly. Moving on. Frame. Look for cracks, broken welds, holes, or other damage to the longitudinal frame members, cross members, box, and floor. 11.3.6, rear of vehicle. Starting with splash guards. If equipped, check that the splash guards or mud flaps are not damaged and are mounted securely. Next is doors/ties/lifts. First, check that the doors and hinges are not damaged and they open, close, and latch properly from the outside if equipped. Next, ties, straps, chains, and binders must be secure. Next, if equipped with a cargo lift, look for leaking, damaged, or missing parts and explain how it should be checked for correct operation. Finally, the lift must be fully retracted and latched securely. Next section, 11.3.7, tractor/coupling. Air/electric connectors. Check that. First, the trailer air connectors are sealed and in good condition. Next, the fittings out of the truck and trailer are secured. Next, all connections from the truck to the trailer are secured. Finally, the trailer electrical plug is firmly sealed and locked in place on both the truck and the trailer. Next is air/electric lines. First, listen for air leaks. Check that the air hoses and electrical lines are not cut, chafed, spliced, or worn, as in the steel braid should not show through. Next, make sure the air and electrical lines are not tangled, pinched, or dragging against tractor parts. Catwalk/steps. Check that the catwalk is solid, clear of objects, and securely bolted to the tractor frame. Next, check that the steps leading to the cab entry and catwalk, if equipped, are solid, clear of objects, and securely bolted to the tractor frame. Finally, check that the storage area is solid to the tongue and the cargo in the storage area is secured. Mounting bolts. First, look for loose or missing mounting brackets, clamps, bolts, or nuts. Both the fifth wheel and slide mounting must be solidly attached. Next, on other types of coupling systems, for example, ball hitch, pintle hook, etc., inspect all coupling components and mounting brackets for missing or broken parts. Next, check for loose or missing mounting bolts. Look for broken welds on the pintle hook or other hitch mount and tongue/drawbar assembly to ensure they are solidly attached in place. Hitch release lever. Check to see that the hitch release lever is in place and secure. Locking jaws. Look into the fifth wheel gap and check that the locking jaws are fully closed around the kingpin. On other types of coupling systems, such as ball hitch, pintle hook, and so on, inspect the locking mechanism for missing or broken parts and make sure it is locked securely. If present, safety cables or chains must be secure and free of kinks and excessive slack. Fifth wheel skid plate. Check for proper lubrication, that the fifth wheel skid plate is securely mounted to the platform and all bolts and pins are secure and not missing. Next is platform, fifth wheel, pintle hook. First, check for cracks or breaks in the platform structure which supports the fifth wheel skid plate. Next, check the pintle hook for cracks, breaks, or excessive wear. Release arm, fifth wheel. If equipped, make sure that the release arm is in the engaged position and that the safety latch is in place. Kingpin/apron/gap. First, explain that the locking jaws hold the kingpin in place and the kingpin is not bent or damaged. Next, make sure that the visible part of the apron is not bent, cracked, or broken. Next, check that the trailer is lying flat on the fifth wheel skid plate, as in no gap. Next, check for the kingpin lock. Locking pins, fifth wheel. If equipped, look for loose or missing pins in the slide mechanism of the sliding fifth wheel. If air-powered, check for leaks. Next, make sure that the locking pins are fully engaged. Next, check that the fifth wheel is positioned properly so that the tractor frame will clear the landing gear during turns. Sliding pintle. Check the sliding pintle hook for excessive wear and to ensure it is secure with no loose or missing nuts or bolts and the cotter pin is in place. Next is tongue or drawbar. First, check that the tongue/drawbar is not bent or twisted and for broken welds and stress cracks. Next, check that the tongue/drawbar eye is not worn excessively. Tongue storage area. Check that the storage area is solid and secured to the tongue. Next, check that the cargo in the storage area, such as chains, binders, and so on, is secure. Check that the cargo in the storage area is secure. 11.4, school bus only. Emergency equipment. In addition to checking for spare electrical fuses, if equipped, 3 red reflective triangles, 6 fuses, or 3 liquid burning flares, and a properly charged and rated fire extinguisher, school bus drivers must also inspect the following emergency equipment. First, emergency kit. Next, body fluid cleanup kit. Lighting indicators. In addition to checking the lighting indicators listed in Section 10 of this handbook, school bus drivers must also check the following lighting indicators or internal panel lights. First, alternately flashing amber lights indicator if equipped. Read it again. Alternately flashing amber lights indicator if equipped. Next, alternately flashing red lights indicator. Finally, strobe light indicator if equipped. Lights/reflectors. In addition to checking the lights and reflective devices listed in Section 10 of this handbook, school bus drivers must also check the following: external lights and reflectors. First, strobe light, if equipped, is operational and not broken. Next, stop arm light, if equipped. Next, alternately flashing amber lights, if equipped, are operational and not broken. Finally, alternately flashing red lights on the front and back of the vehicle are operational and not broken. Student mirrors. In addition to checking the external mirrors, school bus drivers must also check the internal and external mirrors used for observing students. First, check for proper adjustment. Next, check that all internal and external mirrors and mirror brackets are not damaged and are mounted securely with no loose fittings. Finally, check that visibility is not impaired due to dirty mirrors. Stop arm/safety arm. If equipped, check the stop arm to see that it is mounted securely to the frame of the vehicle. Also, check for loose fittings and damage. Check that the stop arm extends fully when operated. Passenger entry/lift. Check that the entry door is not damaged, operates smoothly, and closes securely from the inside. Next, check that the handrails are secure and the step light is working, if equipped. Next, check that the entry steps are clear with the treads not loose or worn excessively. Next, if equipped with a handicap lift, look for leaking, damaged, or missing parts and explain how a lift should be checked for correct operation. Next, the lift must be fully retracted and latched securely. Finally, make sure the lift control interlocks function properly. Emergency exit. Demonstrate that at least one emergency exit is not damaged, operates smoothly, and closes securely from the inside. Next, check that the release handle can be operated properly from both inside and outside the vehicle. Next, point out and describe how all other emergency exits operate. Finally, check that any emergency exit warning devices are working properly. Passenger seating. Look for broken seat frames and check that the seat frames are firmly attached to the floor. Next, check that the seat cushions are attached securely to the seat frames. 11.5 Trailer. 11.5.1 Trailer front. Air/electrical connections. First, check that the trailer air connectors are sealed and in good condition. Next, make sure that the glad hands are locked in place and free of damage or air leaks. Next, make sure that the trailer electrical plug is firmly seated and locked in place. Header board. If equipped, check the header board to see that it is secure, free of damage, and strong enough to contain cargo. Next, if equipped, the canvas or tarp carrier must be mounted and fastened securely. Next, on enclosed trailers, check the front area for signs of damage such as cracks, bulges, holes, or missing rivets. 11.5.2 Side of trailer. Landing gear. First, check that the landing gear is fully raised, has no missing parts, crank handle is secure, and support frame and landing pads are not damaged. Next, if power operated, check for air or hydraulic leaks. Doors/ties/lifts. First, if equipped, check that the doors are not damaged. Check that the doors open, close, and latch properly from the outside. Next, check that the ties, straps, chains, and binders are secure. Next, if equipped with a cargo lift, look for leaking, damaged, or missing parts and explain how it should be checked for correct operation. Finally, the lift should be retracted and latched securely. Frame. Look for cracks, broken welds, holes, or other damage to the frame, cross members, box, and floor. Tandem release arm/locking pins. If equipped, make sure the locking pins are locked in place and the release arm is secured. 11.5.3, remainder of trailer. First, please refer to section 11.3, external inspection, all vehicles of this handbook for detailed inspection procedures regarding the following components. First, wheels. Next, suspension system. Next, brakes. Next, doors/ties/lift. Next, splash guards. 11.6, coach/transit bus. 11.6.1, passenger items. Passenger entry/lift. First, check that the entry doors operate smoothly and close securely from the inside. Next, check that the handrails are secure and, if equipped, that the step lights are working. Next, check that the entry steps are clear and the treads are not loose or worn excessively. Next, if equipped with a handicap lift, look for any leaking, damaged, or missing part and explain how it should be checked for correct operation. Next, the lift should be fully retracted and latched securely. Finally, make sure the lift control interlock or interlocks function properly. Emergency exits. Demonstrate that at least one emergency exit is not damaged, operates smoothly, and closes securely from the inside. First, show that the release handle can be operated properly from both inside and outside of the vehicle. Next, point out and describe how all other emergency exits operate. Next, check that any emergency exit warning devices are working properly. Passenger seating. First, look for broken seat frames and check that the seat frames are firmly attached to the floor. Next, check that the seat cushions are attached securely to the seat frames. 11.6.2, entry/exit. Doors/mirrors. First, check that the entry/exit doors are not damaged and operate smoothly from the outside. The hinges should be secure with the seals intact. Next, make sure that the passenger exit mirrors, all external mirrors, and mirror brackets are not damaged and are mounted securely with no loose fittings. 11.6.3, external inspection of coach/transit bus. Level/air leaks. See that the vehicle is sitting level, front and rear, and, if air-equipped, check for audible air leaks from the suspension system. Fuel tanks. See that the fuel tanks are secure with no leaks from the tanks or lines. Baggage compartments. Check that the baggage and all other exterior compartment doors are not damaged, operate properly, and latch securely. Battery box. Wherever located, see that the battery or batteries are secure, connections are tight, and cell caps are present. Next, battery connections should not show signs of excessive corrosion. Next, check that the battery box and cover or door are not damaged and are secure. 11.6.4, remainder of coach/transit bus. Remainder of vehicle. First, refer to section 11.3, external inspections, all vehicles, of this handbook for detailed inspection procedures for the remainder of the vehicle. Remember, the vehicle inspection test must be passed before you can proceed to the basic vehicle control skills test. 11.7, taking the CDL vehicle inspection test. 11.7.1, Class A vehicle inspection test. If you are applying for a Class A CDL, you will be required to perform one of 4 versions of a vehicle inspection in the vehicle you brought for testing. Each of the 4 tests are equivalent, and you will not know which test you take until just before the testing begins. Tests include an engine start, an in-cab inspection, and inspection of the coupling system. Your test may require an inspection of the entire vehicle or only a portion of the vehicle, which your CDL examiner will explain to you. 11.7.2, Class B and C vehicle inspection test. If you are applying for a Class B or Class C CDL, you will be required to perform one of 3 versions of a vehicle inspection in the vehicle you brought for testing. Each of 3 tests are equivalent, and you will not know which test you take until just before testing begins. Tests include an engine start and in-cab inspection. Your test may require an inspection of the entire vehicle or only a portion of the vehicle, which your CDL examiner will explain to you. You will also have to inspect any special features of your vehicle, for example, school or transit bus. The next page is a graph, and it's titled CDL Vehicle Inspection Memory Aid, and I'll take a picture of it and include it at the end of the chapter.